My name's Scott Dawson. I'm Dean of the Business School at CU Denver. And this is our second Business Insights, a series that we kicked off this year, each one designed to pair faculty members with who are doing important research with industry experts to provide you with insights. And today we're going to focus on cybersecurity. Just 3 weeks ago on a Sunday, I got a text from my bank, Chase, telling me that they were denying a gift card purchase. And I got online and looked, and sure enough, within the sort of less than 24 hours before that, somebody had run up thousands of dollars worth of gift card purchases that I had nothing to do with. I believe that's the third time this has happened to me. I hope that doesn't reflect that I'm a sloppy person somehow, but I think it does reflect the fact that cybersecurity has become ubiquitous to us, and unfortunately, part of our normal life. And my experience is not so severe compared to the other kinds of things that can happen. Our session today will be video recorded and be available afterwards. Please do use the Q&A function. We have reserved the last 15 to 20 minutes for questions. So as we're going through the presentations from our more prepared questions, you want to put your questions in there. We'll get to those in the end. 3 great panelists with us this morning from the business school. Professor Ersin Dincelli is with us. He's an assistant professor of information systems. He received his MBA and PhD in informatics with a primary major in information assurance from the University of Albany at State University of New York. His dissertation received the Distinguished Dissertation Award in 2018-19. His research concerns the behavioral aspects of information security, particularly focusing on individuals' decision-making processes and behaviors in the context of information security, social engineering, attacks, privacy invasive technologies such as social media and wearable devices, and designing innovative security education, training, and awareness to mitigate human error. And Ersin has already in his young career published in some outstanding journals. We also have with us today Sujan Turlapaty. He's the senior executive at Optiv Security, overseeing all of IT and spearheading their digital vision, strategy, and execution of enterprise-wide information technology initiatives to better serve internal and external clients and help optimize business results. He leads enterprise applications, infrastructure, data, digital, and internal security teams. He's a leader with more than 20 years of cross-functional IT experience, and describes himself as being obsessed with creating and capturing value for customers, empowering the workforce, and reimagining business processes. Optiv is a cyber advisory and solutions leader, delivering strategic and technical expertise to more than 7,000 companies. And then our third panelist with us today is Mike Mercer. He's the Chief Security Officer for the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the FBI and the Denver field office, which covers 9 resident agency offices located throughout Colorado and Wyoming. He joined the FBI in 1991 and has been the division's Chief Security Officer for the past 12 years. Mr. Mercer's security responsibilities include information, industrial, physical, and personnel. He directs the Denver FBI Security Squad in identifying, developing, implementing, and maintaining security processes that reduce risk, respond to incidents, and limit exposure to liability. So we have 3 great panelists with us today. So let's go ahead and dive in. So first question for the group. What are the primary breaches of cybersecurity, and what is the approximate magnitude?
I believe that's for me, Sujan. Thank you for inviting to this webinar. I'm very pleased to be present with this panel, esteemed members, and with the college. This slide summarizes kind of quite a bit information out there, but to give you an overview of the cybercrime cost to the world, as you can see on the trends, there is about $10.5 trillion by 2025. I'm sure you heard about increase in ransomware attacks and the cost of that. 2021, this year, we hit $6 trillion. And you can see the cost go up in 2025 to $10 trillion. That just shows the magnitude of the cybersecurity, the cybercrime. And I'm not going to go through all the different bullet points there, but you can see the industry is growing. There are a lot of players, vendors in this landscape trying to solve the problem. This is cybersecurity is a team sport where we do all need to come together, multiple vendors, to solve this threat that we have. This is not a local issue. It's not an organization issue. It's a global issue that we all have a kind of a role to play in this. From a trends perspective, that definitely paints a very, very big picture in terms of the challenges and the opportunities out there. And the landscape that you see, a little bit of a busy picture down there that shows the different vendors that are trying to solve this problem from multiple different angles, whether that's network or infrastructure security or web security or risk and compliance and identity and access management. There's so many different players. With having so many different players, it's also a challenge for organizations. Okay, how do I bring all these different tools, technology together? And above all of this, as you can see more to the right, the social engineering, it's still relying on human behaviors. Cyber criminals are still targeting the basic human behaviors, which are predictable. And no matter how many tools, how many technologies you put in place, one small click on an email, I'm sure Ersin is going to go through that, can change your security landscape. It can change your security risk. If you look at the different trends in the breaches, social engineering is still at the top. System intrusion, basic web application attacks are still very prominent. What is not getting much of traction is the traditional ways of maybe lost assets or stolen assets. Instead of going after those, the cyber criminals, that's like kind of breaking into your network perimeter or security and your LANs and trying to sabotage your tools and systems. They're taking a very easy approach of going after employees. And insider threats, we'll touch upon this a little bit later, is also a big concern for many organizations and what kind of behaviors we need to bring in place. So, I mean, the industry is a very fast-growing industry. There are a lot of players in this. The threat is high, the risk is high, and the challenges in terms of bringing all this together is a challenge for organizations like us trying to provide those unified single pane of control for the organizations to be able to tackle the cybersecurity is a challenge. Overall, the incidents are increasing, the cost of incidents is increasing, the solutions are out there. We need to bring all this together as an organization. It's just not for security organizations. This applies to any organization that has people and they're running businesses.
Sujan, thanks for that overview. And just briefly, could you talk about where your firm sits in this ecosystem?
Everywhere. I mean, we work with more, I would say 400 security vendors or partners in this landscape.
Got it. And Ersin and Mike, do you want to add anything to this initial question?
Go ahead, Ersin. You can speak first.
Sure. So when we think about cybersecurity, we mostly assume that it's a technical problem, but cybersecurity is actually a human problem. So when we look at the statistics in 2020, we see that the phishing attacks has increased by over 500%. And that's because of COVID. People started to receive more sophisticated, more tailored phishing emails, not only to their phishing messages, not only to their emails, but also their phones, also to their social media inboxes. So this makes cybersecurity extremely challenging field. And unfortunately, there is no patch for human vulnerabilities. And the best thing that we can do is to increase awareness of the employees and also the users. and implement proper educational programs.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly with both speakers there. I would also add, not only do we have to worry about the ransomware attacks and whatnot, but also theft of information, proprietary information, intellectual property that our companies have on their systems. And then now we're talking more maybe nation state types of hacks. And it is very difficult, even with all the different tools that are out there. And you guys know this, we're always behind the curve. We'll fix this one problem here, and then the attackers will figure out something and they'll, circumvent it right there. But it does, like Ersin said, come back to the users. It's very, very important that we look at our organization, even my organization, and the users and who's using the devices. We have our laptops that we take home, we have our smartphones. All those devices carry information about what we're doing in our job. So yes, it is extremely important that we all do work together. It is not a one-person job by no means. Information sharing is extremely important because if one company is getting attacked, I can guarantee you there's going to be 5, 6, 7, another dozen companies down the road that are going to get attacked the same way. And getting that information out to the other organizations is paramount.
Okay, thanks for the overview to get started now. So how has cybersecurity impacted the composition and organization of enforcement agencies?
Well, I can only speak to my organization, but I can tell you it has changed. It has changed greatly. I remember coming into the Bureau back in the early 90s. We had squads that were dedicated to healthcare fraud. We had a squad that was dedicated to drugs, investigating drugs and whatnot and stuff. And as time goes through, you see those different priorities pop up. After 9/11, we started getting more into international terrorism and domestic terrorism and whatnot and stuff. And now going into the mid 2000s, the cybercrime, beginning to pick up and whatnot. And now we have dedicated squads that are specifically in charge of those types of investigations. We have a whole division back in DC that is in charge of all the squads around the country and whatnot. So yeah, it has changed dramatically. And even with our other squads, whether it's a criminal squad, a domestic terrorism squad, international terrorism squad, cyber comes into play in just about every investigation that we do here in our in our organization, just because of the devices that are used and what's going on the networks and whatnot. So yeah, it's pretty amazing to see that change throughout the years, and who knows what's going to happen in the future.
And Mike, I'm not sure that you can share this or not, but just like how many people are in the squad for your region for cyber?
That's definitely, I cannot share that right there, but yes, we do have a dedicated squad for that, that particular types of investigation. And each field division throughout the country, we have 56 field divisions throughout the country. They have dedicated squads, and depending on the size of the division, they may have 2 or 3 squads, but they separate what they're exactly investigating and stuff. So yeah, we have quite a few people, I can tell you that much.
So we are spending lots of money on this.
Yes, we are.
Are all devices subject to breach? And I know we touched on that just a moment ago, but
I can answer this. So I know I refer back to human vulnerabilities since this is my research expertise. So my answer to this question will be any device that is used by a human, and any device that is connected to the internet can be hacked, and it can be subject to security breaches. So when we think about devices that has IP addresses, there are various technical vulnerabilities that make them subject to these security breaches, such as default or weak passwords. Most of the Internet of Things devices that we use come with Linux operating system. And because of convenience, manufacturer of these devices use default passwords. And default password for Linux operating system is ROOT and TOOR. So if you try any IoT device, I'm sure most of the time you can log into these devices using these default passwords. And also there are other technical vulnerabilities such as outdated softwares and operating systems, misconfigurations, and improper access control, and also third-party and vendor reliance cause a lot of vulnerabilities. For example, we rely on cloud computing, and that means that we basically give our data to a third party that we don't necessarily know. And our data might be even in overseas, stored in the databases in overseas, and it might be subject to different policies and law. But more importantly, people represent the weakest link in the cybersecurity chain. And actually, according to a report published by IBM, 95% of the security breaches in organizations in 2020 were caused by human error. So humans have vulnerabilities, and these include negligence, cognitive biases, habits, needs, desires, and other situational factors. And unfortunately, there is no patch for these human vulnerabilities, and we make all the devices that is connected to the internet vulnerable and expose them to potential breaches.
And what are some best practices for minimizing phishing?
So, Michaela, can you share the third slide, please? So first of all, we have to understand how phishing works. So most of the time, attackers carefully design the phishing messages, considering the human vulnerabilities that I have been talking about. And the purpose of this is to prevent logical thinking and getting an impulsive reaction. And the impulsive reaction to stimulus such as an authority figure or urgency, altruism, greed, fear, curiosity, similarity, friendship, and so on. So in most cases, attackers combine multiple stimuli to cloud rational judgment. And for example, this is an email that we received from Scott a few months ago. And when we look at this email, we see that there are a few things going on. So this is not a good phishing email, and it was luckily not successful. But when we look at this, we see that this email is coming from an authority figure. It is coming Scott Dawson, the Dean of Business School. And then it creates a sense of urgency. And even the subject line says that it is urgent. And then there is also altruism. And Scott is asking for help. And we tend to help people. So when we see these emails from an authority figure asking for help and asking the help urgently, we are more likely to open these emails. And also we are more likely to click on the malicious link that these emails possess, or complete the action that is requested in this phishing email. So the best practices are understanding how the phishing emails work. So if we see emails that are coming from authority figures and requesting certain things, we have to check their email addresses. As you can see on this screenshot, the name of the sender is Scott Dawson, but it is a Gmail address that belongs to someone else. So it is very easy to spot. And there are also technical solutions that we can use, such as browser warnings, and some of the virus softwares also warn about phishing, but attackers usually find a way to get away from these technical solutions. And also, as I mentioned, increasing awareness increasing awareness of the employees, giving them a frequent educational programs about security is the best practice to prevent phishing. And also, as a user, we do not open any emails from untrusted sources. We have to look for clues. Phishing emails usually include typos or unrealistic headlines. And we have to check the grammar. Most of them are quite easy to spot. And this one is very straightforward, but we also have to lock our computers. So we might be very cognizant about phishing, but someone else in our office or in our house can click a malicious link in a phishing email using our computer.
I didn't even know Apple iTunes were still a thing. Sujan and Mike, you have anything you want to add to this?
Sujan, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I just want to add to Ersin in terms of your previous question, are all devices part of your attack surface? Yes, every device, every user, every network, every person. There's a saying in cybersecurity, trust but verify. We would take it a little bit further and say verify then trust, because we are no longer can say that we are protected by your perimeter. Like if you're in your college network, you're inside the network, you're protected. Not necessarily. You can, because someone can simulate that user and still be lurking around in your network, not necessarily doing anything immediately, but they could be sitting out there for months before something really big comes out of it. And also from a security perspective, we recommend that your security policies, awareness, training, tools, technology, follow the user, follow the identity, rather than, okay, if you're logged into a network or a laptop, doesn't mean it's trusted. So I would take a step further in saying, okay, the whole concept of zero trust, you will hear quite a bit in the industry, is gaining a lot of prominence. The underlying principles are exactly that. Trust, yes, but you have to verify then trust, and then you have to do that on a continuous, regular basis. It's not like a one-time exercise. It's not like a one annual exercise that you do and then say, okay, we're good, we are certified. It has to be on an ongoing basis. The phishing emails, we highly recommend that you do some simulations of phishing emails, like what Ersin has, simulate Scott from top management as well as your network admin. If you get an email from your IT admin, that doesn't mean I mean, you still have to follow the non-logical. I mean, it's very easy to click on a link where it says change your password. It's very easy to kind of draw your attention, especially when you're in the middle of something busy happening in your work life, trying to do something, and then if you click on something, one small click can open up a lot of issues. Mike, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to add, it's almost a cultural change. I mean, if you think about many years ago, some younger folks, some of us were a little older back then, but still, the big thing was clicking on links. You know, here's a joke, here's a website to go check out, here's an attachment to open up and whatnot. We were all kind of in that frame of mind that it's okay to do that. And then our attackers decided, well, you know what? That's a pretty interesting attack vector that we can use to get, malware on a system or get somebody to give up their credentials or something like that. So we kind of got to change the way we think. I like to tell my folks, don't click on anything, period. You don't have to open up an attachment or a link as soon as you see it. Take your time. It's okay. I remember when I was in boot camp, when I was in the military, I wrote a letter home. It took 5 days to get home. It took 5 days to get back. You have time. Just take it a little easy, relax a little bit. It's not the end of the world if you don't open that email from your boss. He can wait or she can wait. It's okay. And whatnot. And of course, like with Ersin, with the education side of the house of it, there for many years, it's always been that just awareness. You get that one training once a year, but that's not enough. It's a continual process. You have to look at each individual differently. We all learn differently. And in the larger the organization, the harder it is. I like the folks that have the small companies because it's much easier to educate those folks. But when you have 30, 40, 50,000 people in your organization, it's extremely difficult. And it only takes one click. That's it. And it's almost 100% accurate for the attacker. They're going to get in just about 100% of the time because it only takes that one click. So yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with the group on this last discussion here. It's the education part. It's to get the the folks to change the way they think about the emails and stuff that they receive.
And Mike, so firms all these different sizes putting in place these educational kinds of programs to minimize the potential effectiveness of these attacks. What would be some measures of how effective those programs have been?
That is actually a very difficult question, because you can set a process through. I can educate everybody in my organization here, and I can do the tests. I can double check to see who's clicking on links and things like that. And then a year later, something happens. Was my education effective? My training effective? Some may say yes, because out of 100 people, 99 didn't click on it, but that one person did. You know, so it is very, very difficult. I think it's an ongoing process. It takes a lot of time, because you're bringing in individuals that may not really care so much about cybersecurity, and you got to change the way, you know, they think about it. I like to add their personal devices to it. I mean, we protect classified information on our networks and whatnot, and our folks are pretty good about that kind of stuff, because it's very, very serious. But when you bring in their personal devices and what they have, say, on their smartphones or on their laptops and whatnot, it kind of correlates that a little bit, kind of brings it together, and being able to provide them with real world scenarios. That's another really good thing. I mean, that visual, that one-on-one, going online and just doing, you know, a little quick test, and that's it. That, I mean, one in ear, not the other, like my dad used to say. But having that conversation with folks, and having them coming to you with questions about what they're doing, that's also another, I think, another good indicator that they're really accepting the cybersecurity side of the house, because they want to protect that information, whether it's classified or unclassified or not. I mean, they're coming to you and asking you questions, and you're providing them with a good solution. You just can't say no. You got to find a way to say yes. And, you know, we have operations to complete. And I know private sector, you know, they have their business that they need to conduct and whatnot. And, you know, as the cybersecurity professional, we're here to, you know, mitigate that risk and assist them in getting their job done.
Commissioner
Sujan, you want to add anything else? Yeah.
I think Mike did articulate really well. That's exactly what it is. There's no elimination of risk. There's mitigation of risk. All we can do is that. With everything that we do with training tools, there's some tools that are more advanced, like behavioral analytics, kind of predicts human behaviors and maybe identify some patterns in your organization and provide some recommendations. So definitely there is some advancements in technology that can take that human factor a little bit more behavioral aspect to it. But at the end of the day, it's still that one click, once email can open up a lot of issues. So it still goes back to that human behavior. You cannot assume that 100% of the time the people are going to be right in there. It doesn't have to be malicious. It doesn't have to be ill intent. Sometimes you have, and one example is you can have someone with very advanced privileges, like your administrator or someone who has access to a lot of systems. And if that person's identity is compromised, that's all it takes. And that person may have clicked on something unintentional, but the privileged user access is something that the attackers will go after, because they have access to go after one person and then you get access to the system. So there's a lot of different factors at play. Our recommendation is you need to have multiple layers of protection. Multiple layers of protection to identify, protect, detect, respond. This is the standard protocol that is followed, but make sure you have multiple layers. Make sure you have multi-factor authentication. So for some reason, something is compromised, you have a second step or a two-step process verification, something that you're all familiar with when you're working with your banks, when you're trying to make bank or money transfers. There's a verification. So make that a standard process even within your network, so that there's that multiple layers that can protect and catch these breaches or incidents.
So something we haven't really talked about is the threat of insider actions, insider threats. And so what can companies do to minimize the impact from insider threats?
This is still, I think, if there is one message that we are trying to convey here is that human behavior, insider threats, companies do invest quite a bit in tools, technology, processes to protect from external threats. And the insider threats is still a prominent issue. I think there's a recent survey that showed like 22% of the attacks or the breaches do come from inside, whether that's a disgruntled employee or that's an employee that was unintentional, they clicked on something, that they opened up something, or it could be the organizations. We all heard about this great resignation where there's this churn and turnover that is happening. That could be an issue because you cannot expect someone coming new to the organization to know the policies and procedures right away. And then with this constant churn, you're kind of catching up. Or maybe from an IT organization perspective, you make some assumptions that people are familiar with your policies and procedures, and not necessarily a newcomer into the organization may not be aware of it. That's playing a big role with employee turnover. Another is, Mike mentioned, the remote workplace. I mean, now our offices, home offices, network, the attack surface is much larger. We need to protect more than just 4 or 5 offices and then expect when people come into the office they're protected, but now the home networks, home Wi-Fi are part of your network. So it is becoming a bigger challenge. I mean, there's the tools, combinations, training, awareness, constant keep it top of the mind. Sometimes there is also, on the flip side, when there is so much security awareness happening, there could be a fatigue that kicks in and saying, okay, now I'm kind of I'm not truly paying attention. So you got to kind of balance it on how much awareness you're pushing, making sure it's effective. Like we were asking about Scott on how do you measure this, trying to measure it and then tweak it a little bit to make sure, or to ensure that it is following the human behaviors and you're making some changes to the way you are conveying your message or your training procedures.
Well, you made a really good point about all the churn going on right now. And I wonder how many companies actually include cybersecurity training as part of their onboarding process, particularly smaller ones, right?
Yeah, if you're doing once a year annual exercise and then the new comers in your organization, they miss that training session and they're either joined before or after. Now they miss, they're out for like next 12 months. So whenever you're using next awareness training, so keep it continuous training.
And Mike, you have any other insights on insider threats?
Insider threat is probably the worst one out of everything. We would like to say they have the keys to the kingdom. They have access to that information. And I can see, I mean, because I always look at it from my perspective in my organization. I mean, we have all kinds of processes in place because we all have security clearances. So we're all watching that continuously. Do we have any foreign contacts? Who's our roommates? Financial issues and things like that we looked at from the past from other insider threats that we've had, Hansen, a few other ones that even in our organization that we had to deal with, and even, out in the other organizations, Snowden, everybody hears about Snowden and whatnot. But for a private company, it is extremely difficult for that. I mean, there's things that you can do as far as network monitoring, what information is being pulled off of the network, whether is anybody downloading something, who has access to what information, this information over here is probably sensitive, but this information over here is probably more sensitive. So, you might want to protect that a little bit more. So there's not one fix that goes across the board. It's the organization and the executive managers and the security professionals that have to, determine what and how they're going to protect, particular parts of their network and what information they need to protect. But the insider is the one that will damage you the most with your organization. Just take all your proprietary information, all your intellectual property, and walk right out the door with it if they want to. And by then, sometimes the damage is done, and it's not good after that.
Maybe if I could ask a follow-on question, how difficult is it to catch and prosecute not only inside breaches, people who've breached inside, but also from the outside?
It depends. Okay. Now, if we're going to go back to the insider threat part of it, it's probably not as hard because they're here in the United States and we have access to all that. But if we have attackers that are overseas, that might be a little bit difficult to capture them and bring them back here, depending on what country they're in. I mean, there's one thing to remember about, at least on the cybersecurity side of the house, what you do on the internet, it's logged everywhere. The information is out there. When you click on a link, when you open your phone and you have your contacts and you go to a website, or you go to your bank or whatever the case may be, there's a trail that can be followed. So that trail is easily investigated. But when it comes to actually grabbing the individual and bringing them back here to the United States, depending on where they're at, that can be quite difficult if we don't have treaties, or if that particular country does not want to, provide that individual to us to be prosecuted and whatnot. So it all depends. It all depends.
Different
a little
question.
fun fact to what Mike said: 2/3 of the world's GDP is digitized.
Oh.
And anything that you do online, to Mike's point, is there's a digital snapshot of that somewhere.
And there's one more thing to add, especially when it comes back to the phishing emails and whatnot. All of us, everything about us is online, period. There's no two ways around it. And getting rid of that is, I'd say, impossible. Attackers are going to use that information to create different types of phishing emails. And if they're going to go specifically for a particular company, they're going to go to that company and they're going to look at their website. They're going to look at the folks that work there. They're going to go to their social media, and it's open source intelligence. They're going to put all that together and they're going to create a phishing email. And like I said, it only takes one, but some of these emails are very, very good. I don't know if you guys heard of business compromise emails. When somebody gets an email from the CEO and says, transfer $1 million to this account, it happens all the time and people do it. You got to be very, very, very careful with the emails that you receive. Extremely careful.
It's a different kind of question, Ersin. What kind of technologies seem to be most promising for cybersecurity?
So we have established technologies such as encryption, biometrics, such as fingerprint and facial recognition and two-factor authentications. And these are established technologies that really help security professionals protect the organizational assets. And then we have emerging technologies such as blockchain and artificial intelligence that have been used in organizations, but these are new technologies and they have drawbacks that can put organizations in a difficult situations. For example, artificial intelligence. It makes security monitoring much easier, and these artificial intelligence methods implement machine learning and deep learning algorithms, meaning that you can identify potential intrusions or attacks without human intervention. However, AI-based systems depend on data. So you have to feed data to your algorithm. And now it starts to create a problem because the data that you feed to the AI is an organizational data set. And it might include a lot of sensitive and confidential data. And this is necessary for the efficiency of the AI-based security controls. And more data you feed, more efficient they become, but they turn into black box systems. So in cybersecurity, you should be able to explain every decision that you make in an organizational settings. Unfortunately, by using AI-based security controls, you lose this capability because you don't necessarily know why the algorithm make a certain decision.
It's one of the questions that somebody had logged in on. Other Mike or Sujan, and further comments on that question?
Yeah, to the advancements that we are seeing in technology from a cybersecurity product tools perspective, the same advancements that cyber criminals have access to, same machine learning, same AI capabilities. So it's always going to be a little bit of catch up because the tools, technology advancements kind of play on both sides of the game here. So it's not like one has an advantage, technology perspective or technically over the other. It's always going to be taken advantage on both sides.
Yeah, there's always an offense, there's always a defense, and there's always a defense, and there's always an offense.
Yes.
It's a big circle.
Yeah.
Whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
Question from Rut here. Can you comment on the capture of encrypted files in anticipation of quantum computing availability?
Is that question for me?
Anybody who would like to address that question that came from somebody in the audience, from the
I
participants?
think when it comes to encryption, it's and you know, this has probably been in the news these past couple of years and whatnot. It's still that cat and mouse game. Yeah, they'll maybe have quantum computing and they'll break this encryption maybe in a couple of years, but then they'll find something else to make that encryption even more stronger, and it'll take 100,000 years to encrypt it. So or to break it. So it's that circle thing. You start at one end, come back down at the bottom, and you go right back around again. So it's continuing. Yeah, there may be some advancements real quick, but either cyber criminals or somebody else will come back out with something else, and it will tighten right back up again.
Well, encryption is a mathematical problem, and every encryption key can be decrypted, and it just matter of time. And of course, advanced computer systems make it much easier. But as Michael mentioned, there will be new technologies. There will be new encryption algorithms that will make decrypting the key much harder, such as blockchain. Blockchain technology is one promising technology in cybersecurity field, and with combining blockchain with encryption and AI, will hopefully provide much stronger and protected systems.
Sujan, you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, access to the quantum computing, this is where the cybercrime, when they're state-sponsored, nation-sponsored, they do have access to that. It's not something that someone in their basement can have access to that. So but when you have a nation or state playing playing this game, it's going to be large scale. It's not. Now we're talking about big league attacks and breaches in the system.
So Mike and Sujan, I wonder, and Ersin, Ersin, you mentioned blockchain, decentralized finance, and so forth. With that whole movement growing so much, should we be really worried, or not, because it's such advanced technology?
Well, the new technologies also bring up new attack vectors, new vulnerabilities. So everything seems to be quite nice when the technology first proposed, but I think we have to wait and see what blockchain technology will bring up in terms of new vulnerabilities and attack vectors.
Yeah, I would say blockchain is still, the promise of blockchain is still something that we have to see. I mean, it's so promising from a concept and the technology from a design perspective, but we haven't seen that adoption. We haven't seen that become mainstream yet. It depends on how organizations can make it, the research and development behind it, and then make it a lot more accessible, easy to consume, and provide it as a service. That's an area still underdeveloped.
We don't see many blockchain business applications, and the only application that is established is cryptocurrencies. But there are new advancements such as metaverse and non-fungible assets. And I'm currently working on a research project that tries to eliminate online advertising by proposing a blockchain-based, browser-based cryptocurrency mining. So basically the idea is to ask user to use his or her computational power instead of paying subscription or seeing online advertising. But technically, it's not possible to do that yet because it is very difficult to mine cryptocurrencies on browsers. But we are getting there. And as we have more powerful GPUs and CPUs, we will see more and more applications of blockchain.
Apologize, somebody's car alarm just went off outside my window here. Do you see any trends with respect to companies building out their own internal cybersecurity departments or relying more on third parties?
I can take that. I mean, there are 3 million cybersecurity jobs worldwide open. So trying to find talent in this industry is challenge. It's a big challenge. So organizations are constantly trying to figure out this. To your question, Scott, on do we build our internal competency or do we partner with the third party or managed service providers? That's always a question that they need, or it's a balance that they need to figure it out. Depending on the kind of business they are in, depending on IP, Mike touched this a little bit on how they want to protect their internal assets, how much they can provide access to third party. But this is something that every organization has to figure out what should be their strategy. And sometimes it's a hybrid model. You want to keep some expertise and build that competencies in-house while you partner and see if you can outsource some of these capabilities to a third party so that you can get best of both. But if someone is trying to get into the cybersecurity industry, there are, like I said, 3 million worldwide, 500,000 open positions that are yet to be filled.
Yeah, and Ersin, maybe we can follow on that in terms of just employment opportunities and all. That's a massive,
yes,
labor demand need there. Just kind of your overview of if somebody's interested in this as a profession, where do you start?
Sure. So first of all, Sujan mentioned an important point. We have 3 million job openings. Last year we were only able to employ 65% of these job openings in the United States. And this percentage drops in Colorado. I believe it was 58.5% last year. And these statistics are based on government data. If you go to cyberseek.org, you can see the job openings and all these figures. So it is quite important to address this workforce gap. And there are many initiatives that governments and organizations undertake. But what I would suggest is to take a cybersecurity class. If you're a student and if you're interested in cybersecurity, take an introductory cybersecurity class and see what it is about. When I talk to my students, they usually think that cybersecurity is a technical field. They think that there is programming involved. There is technical stuff that they are afraid of involving with. So I am from a computer science department. I got my PhD from a computer engineering and applied sciences college, but I teach cybersecurity in business school. And there are different aspects of cybersecurity. So it's not just about technical. We need cybersecurity experts who know psychology, sociology. Also, we need lawyers who can address all of these problems that we have talked about. So I suggest them to start with the class. And there are many certifications that one can take. And these certifications are provided by international organizations. And unfortunately, most of the organizations look for these certificates on the job applicants' resumes. And these entry-level certificates might be a good entry point to cybersecurity field, such as Security Plus, Network Plus, Certified Ethical Hacker, and so on.
Thanks, Ersin. So question from Ellie, who would be interested in hearing more about collecting evidence and on the usefulness of forensic backups and virtual notarization based on blockchain validation. guys are more technical than me. Maybe you understand that question. So
well,
again,
as far as the forensic side of the house, absolutely. I mean, that's part of our investigation when an incident occurs, whether it's on someone's cell phone or on their laptop or on the network itself. That's the first things that we're going to come and retrieve is the logs from those devices and whatnot, the switches, the routers, the CPUs, the servers, everything. We're gonna ask for all that information because that's gonna be the trail that we're gonna use during the investigation. Those are extremely important for the investigation. So yeah, absolutely.
What about the blockchain piece? We talked about blockchain a little bit before. I mean, can you actually get access to ledgers to be able to trace back the same way you were talking about?
Well, if you're talking about cryptocurrency, everything is there as far as the transactions where the cryptocurrency goes and all that data. The hard part is when it leaves, who retrieves that when they transfer it, say, from the exchange and then goes into a bank account or something like that. That's your weakest link is right there. But as it moves through the system, yeah, you can go online and look at all the different transactions. It's all there. You don't know who it is until they remove it, but it's all the information is there.
Thanks, Mike. Sujan or Ersin, you want to add anything to that?
I think blockchain definitely embraced on the crypto side of the business here, not yet into the mainstream, and not yet into the systems and networks and laptops. I mean, there's no way for us to connect those dots across network, user, laptop, personal devices. We're not there yet.
There's a question from Vlad who asks, when a cyber crime is committed and originated in the US and then spreads to a worldwide level, at which times does Interpol get involved?
If it's somebody overseas, we definitely get Interpol involved. So for instance, if we indict somebody that's in another country and that country doesn't want to provide that individual back to the US or extradite them to the US, or they have no treaty whatsoever with that country. If that individual happens to leave that country and goes to another country and they go through the process through immigration and whatnot, and they're pinged in the system, as we call it, yeah, then we can arrest them that way. Interpol will get involved, and then they will arrest them, and then they will extradite them to the US. So yes, they do get involved.
And what about the cyber fraud task force? How do they get involved in this?
Well, we don't have like a cyber squad task force. It's cyber investigations period, so it covers the whole gamut.
Okay.
Of the investigation. So we don't have nothing specifically for fraud. It's just part of that cybersecurity, or I mean, actually cyber squad.
Okay.
Cyber investigation. There we go.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Here's a great question from Kelly, particularly relative to us since we have a risk management insurance program. The cyber insurance market is going crazy right now. Do you think it will continue to be crazy? I'm not sure if any of the presenters are familiar with insurance aspect.
I can take a little bit of that. Cyber insurance definitely getting a lot of traction. Again, this is your protections that you're trying to put in place to protect your organization or assets, depending on your type of business. So definitely something gaining traction. But there is a word of caution there. Just because you have cyber insurance doesn't mean it's protected. It's going to protect you for everything. There's a lot of different clauses in there. But organizations, if they embrace that model of, okay, let me bring in a cyber insurance, when you bring in the cyber insurance, they've come in with a checklist of things of, okay, do you have zero trust? Do you have these policies, procedures? So that's one way to ensure that you are revisiting your organization in terms of policies, procedure, tools, technology, training, and others. So it does provide an avenue for you to enhance your capabilities from a protection perspective. But again, if someone is going through the cyber insurance, you need to go through it and make sure that you have all the different clauses, good understanding of those clauses, because it's not going to provide you a blank protection for everything. You need to make sure that you are doing things on your end for you to qualify for the cyber insurance.
Thanks. We had a lot of questions in here on blockchain, which hopefully we've addressed fairly well. Maybe I'll just one last question here from Caleb, who asks, other than educating employees and users, what kind of mitigation efforts do you see in the future? Sujan mentioned a no trust policy. Will remote work seriously complicate or influence such efforts?
Remote complicates, but I think that's becoming the new normal. We're kind of embracing this hybrid environment. So organizations are definitely adapting and embracing this hybrid culture, and everything, any policies, any new technologies that you're planning to roll out, any new business processes that you are bringing into the organization, or even reimagining your business processes, there's always this hybrid model applied to that, saying, like, how does it work for an employee coming into an organization, into like a physical building to versus working from home. That experience equality is something that we are putting a lot of emphasis on to make sure that everyone gets similar experience. When I say experience, it's just not only the experience, but also similar security controls. When you're at home, when you're in the office, or in the college campus, that if we can normalize that security attack surface and the controls that you want to put in place, that way you can ensure that folks coming in and out, working from home, you're not having different policies and different procedures.
Ersin or Mike, you want to add anything to that to close?
Yeah, I would agree 100% that remote is definitely difficult. In an organization who decides to use that type of work has to really look at their security on their network. Do they want somebody just logging in with credentials and that's it? Do they want to use a VPN? Are they looking at two-factor? You know, there's just a numerous things that an organization would have to consider to keep their information safe.
Well, thanks for a super educational and stimulating hour here on cybersecurity, Ersin and Sujan and Mike. We appreciate your time here, but not only the important work that you do to minimize the impact. Some of these become so pervasive part of the landscape these days. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I'd invite you to log in for our next Business Insights, which is on December the 7th. And we'll address something that just came up here in the end, which is hybrid working. And we've got a great panel. We have the CFO from Chase, the thought leader from CBRE, and our own Wayne Cassio, who's done a lot of research in that area. So promises to be an informative hour as well. Just a reminder that this was taped, and I believe you'll get an email with a link to that tape. And thanks very much. I hope you all have a great day.
Thank you all.